have now moved on to the history section of this whole video, and who better to talk about the history of RfR than the founder and current president of Recovering from Religion, Dr. Darrel Ray. Dr. Ray, thanks for being with us today.
Well, thanks for doing this, Eric. This is a great project. Actually, I love it. I think it's a great idea.
I'm really enjoying it. Well, most people probably know who you are, but for those few who don't, Dr. Ray, tell us a little bit about who you are. Like, what kind of, who are you? What do you do?
Well, I'm retired right now, but I seem to spend almost full time helping Gail run Recovering from Religion, and you and other people, of course. It's a pretty gigantic effort that I had no idea I was signing up for 12, 13 years ago. But other than that, I'm a psychologist by training and practiced clinical psychology early in my career, and then later moved into organizational psychology for the majority of my career, 30 years or so. And before that, I was a confused college student who took courses in sociology, anthropology, psychology, ended up with a bachelor's degree in sociology and anthropology, then went on to get a master's degree in religion, because as confused as I was, I thought I could contribute best by being a minister. Although I was a super liberal minister and very interested I went to Scarrett College for Christian Workers because it was literally the only school in the entire nation that had what we would now call a social justice angle to it. And I arrived in the fall, September of 1972 to this school in Nashville, Tennessee. And within days, I'm involved in civil rights activism with my then advising professor, Dr. Bill Barnes, who was probably one of the most liberal Christians I've ever met in my life. He just died at the age of 93, I think, Wow. last year. And wow. I never got to see him again since the mid 70s, and just tell him, I wish I could tell him how much influence he had on my life. But I was literally helping with all sorts of civil rights stuff through him. So I got this social justice angle, religious education, and thought I would become a minister to an urban minister. It's what it was called, the urban ministry, where I would be with a inner city church. I would be helping develop programs and stuff. I really didn't want to be the preacher every Sunday. I wanted to be the programmatic person, which, as you can see, I'm pretty good at. Anyway, after I got out of a 2-year master's degree, I realized most of it was bullshit. I still remained a liberal Christian, but I then moved on into my doctoral studies, and then graduated from Peabody College of Vanderbilt University in December 1978, and then moved back to my home state of Kansas, and I've been here ever since. But from very early on, Eric, I was very interested in religion. And I also had inklings of how religion hurt people, because it actually hurt me. I'm not going to claim that my story is nearly as bad as the stories that come to us, but I had enough understanding of what was going on there, and then later with my psychology training, to realize that religion is a real net harm in the world. I'm not going to say religion's totally bad, but it's 90% bad. That's where I'll go. Do we really want? Is really the 10% worth the pain and shame and guilt of the other 90% that almost every religion pushes? So that's kind of where I came from. I also wrote a couple papers when I was in graduate school that kind of influenced me at the time, doing the research for those papers. And then, of course, I went into my career, and as a result of just kind of staying involved in religion, I was usually involved in very liberal religions, churches. I have the singular distinction of having taught evolution to high school students in the church, in my home church, when I was still in in college.
In Tennessee?
In Wichita, Kansas. No, that's
Kansas. Taught evolution to church students.
And I was trying to show them, quote, trying to show them that God and evolution can go together. I didn't actually believe it, but anyway, that was the only way I could get away with it. But I did, and then later, many years later, in the mid '80s, I was still my wife was religious, but she was also very liberal. We've been divorced since 1988, but we're still good friends. We can still communicate and help raise two great kids. But she was still religious and insisted that we go to some church. So we always went. I got her to go to the most liberal church we could find in whatever town we were living in. So I was in the Presbyterian church in the mid '80s, and there I taught comparative religions for the Sunday school class. I taught evolution for the Sunday school class. I tell you, they couldn't get anybody to teach. I wasn't even a member of the damn church. It was the most liberal church that I could get my wife to go to. And they needed Sunday school teachers. Well, I taught Sunday school, so I would volunteer. Well, they weren't going to kick me out because they couldn't get anybody else. And I would have literally, Eric, I would have standing room only attendance at my, when I took the Sunday school, this particular one took that class over, there were like 6 people showing up every week. And all they really wanted to do was socialize. When I started putting a program together and talking about real stuff, it was standing room only within 3 or 4 weeks. And I had a whole series. You will like this. I had a whole series on different religions. I had the Baha'i religion. I had the Islamic religion. I had a Scientology. I just went through a list of about 5 or 6 of them, did a little research, and then gave kind of mini lectures on them. And then, of course, half the classes on question and answer time period. So, the format looks familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah, it kind of does.
And so you stole my ideas, what you did.
I think you're right.
No, you didn't even know it. So fast forward many years, and I am getting towards the end of my organizational psych career. And I started reading Dawkins and Hitchens and Harris and Dennett and Bertrand Russell, you name it. I read a lot of books, Dan Barker. And at the end of all those reading, literally throughout the early 2000s, I was reading all these books, and I just said, damn it, nobody has talked about the psychology of religion here. They've got philosophy, they've got neuropsychology, maybe with Sam Harris, but not much of that. They've got the anthropology, you name all the fields, but there's not a single psychologist talking about the psychology of religion. And those that are usually Christians, and they're basically saying religion's good for you because it prevents depression, or whatever else.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, this ain't what I'm seeing. So that's what inspired me to write The God Virus. Well, actually, Richard Dawkins inspired me to write The God Virus because he wrote an essay called Viruses of the Mind way back in like 1989. I didn't read it until the early 2000s. And that one essay just kept coming back to me. I keep thinking, I need to write something on this because Dawkins touched on it, but he didn't elaborate. And then one of the papers I wrote in my master's degree in religion was on the civil religion. And again, that paper just kept coming back to me over and over and again. So when I put the notion of the civil religion and the God virus or the mind viruses together, that's what exploded in my mind and paved the way for me to write The God Virus. So I wrote The God Virus basically in the year 2008 and published it right at the beginning of 2009. And as a result of that book coming out, it was very successful. I never dreamed it would sell as many. It still sells really well. And it just didn't dawn on me. I had no name. Nobody had ever read a book I'd written. I'd written 2 other books, but they were all in organizational psychology. So I didn't have what they call a platform in the publishing industry. Nobody knew who I was. So whatever I publish is probably not going to sell. If nobody's, if you don't have that kind of platform. But it sold very well anyway, and has continued to. But what it did was it struck a note in people. And I think it's because it's written from a psychological perspective. And everybody is interested in their own psychology.
Right.
They're interested in how they got where they are and who they are and how identity is formed, and why does guilt such a big thing, and why does shame feel so bad? And I mean, there's lots of pieces there, and none of those are addressed by anthropology. None of them are addressed by sociology or philosophy, but psychology explains it or helps explain it. And that was what touched people. And as a result, I was getting calls and emails and people almost literally knocking on my door saying, I need help. And I couldn't help everybody. So I came on this crazy idea by way of my publicist. I had hired this guy as my publicist, and he was supposed to help me get the word out on the God virus. And he didn't do that great a job. But one of the things he did say was, you should start an organization called Recovering from Religion and use that to sell your book. So I thought, well, okay, that's a good idea. I might sell some more books that way because I don't have a platform. I need a way to get the word out.
Right.
And I met, I'm telling this story to you, but you know this story in many ways. I go down to the IHOP. I announce a meeting on Meetup, and at the IHOP 2 weeks later, I've got 11 people showing up, and I only know one of the people in the room. And I just asked them, how did religion hurt you, and how did religion help you? How did religion hurt you, and how have you been helped since leaving religion? And like 2 hours later, 3 hours later, we're getting kicked out of the room because they're closing the room. At that moment, I realized I had people crying in this meeting. I had people emoting all over the place. I had people questioning deeply, deeply why they felt so much shame, and they don't even believe in the religion anymore. And at the moment I walked out of that room, I thought, this is not a gimmick for selling books. This is a serious undertaking, and I cannot just leave it here. So I started announcing every couple of weeks that we would have a meeting at that IHOP again. And it was very quickly after that, I got two other people, a guy named Cole and a woman named Kay, that were involved in our secular movement right here in Kansas City. And both of them became interested. So I quickly handed off the one meeting to Kay, and we started another meeting south of here, about 20 miles, that Cole took over. And both these people ran those meetings for another 4 or 5 years, roughly having a meeting every month. And that was the start of Recovering from Religion. We weren't formally organized. We didn't have a, incorporation or anything. It took us, it took a while for me to think, this is really important. This is something that I need to pay attention to and grow. It took me about 3 years. I tried to get other people to help me. And initially I couldn't get the kind of help I needed. And then after about 3+ years, I thought, screw this, I got to do this by myself. and so I put the basic structure together and was able from then on to start really recruiting people to help me. People just needed to see a structure they could plug themselves into. And then people like Eric Well comes along and starts a Recovering from Religion group in Springfield. And I think you were like the 5th group we started. Literally, you were one. You were like number 5 out of the originals. The first 3 were here in Kansas City, and then I think one in Ohio, if I recall, and then one in Topeka, and then I think you came along in Springfield. I think you were number 5 or 6, if I recall. So that's how Recovery from Religion got started, and it was not a planned. I didn't plan this. I was too busy. I had a corporation, my own corporation to run. I'm the CEO of my own small consulting firm with employees and all. When I announced to my staff that I was writing this book, my office manager turned white. She said, "Well, Darrel, we're going to lose all our clients." And I said, "Well, we might lose a few, but I'm not too worried about it. I have to write this book. It's too important." Right. And so I wrote the book, I released the book, and we promptly lost all but 2 of my clients.
Wow, so really?
Clients that I had for 20 years, literally going back to the late 80s, early 90s, clients I'd had for a long time, for sure. And this is 2008, 2009. And they just dropped me like a hot potato.
Wow.
And they'd known me for 20 years. And
right.
in the consulting business, you don't stay with a company for 20 years unless you're doing a damn good job.
Right.
And in many of these companies, I had stayed longer than several CEOs, longer than several HR directors. So I was doing something that was really valuable to them, or they wouldn't have kept paying me the money they were paying me. But many of them were evangelical Christians. Of course, it's Midwest and all that I live. And so losing those clients forced me to make a decision about what to do. And that decision meant I had to retire early. I couldn't make a living anymore. My business had disappeared right underneath my feet. So I started shutting down the business. And fortunately for me, the God virus sold enough copies to make up for much of the lost income that I had that first 2 or 3 years. And I was able to go ahead and, I won't say smoothly retire, but at least retire without going into deep debt or anything. And then I could just focus on recovery from religion and start figuring out what programs do we need. And one of the first programs I recognized was the Secular Therapy Project, which you'll be talking later about with other people. And that came from just the cries and need for help, finding a good therapist that doesn't pray with you or send you back to Jesus or tell you your depression is because you don't go to church or believe in God. And that came out of a lot of work in late 2010, 2011. I met a man named Hans Hills at a conference. And I told him, I don't know how it all came about, but I was telling him, we really need to find secular therapists. But I can't do it because I don't have the technical skills. And he said, well, I've got the technical skills, so I'll volunteer to do it. And it took him about 8 months to put the shell of the web page together and to help me put the database together. And then I announced it in May of 2012. And I already had found 25 different, I think it was 24 different therapists that would agree to sign on. And so I had a core of 24 therapists. And that's how the Secular Therapy Project got started in May of 2012. And then about 3 years later, David Klinge came along, and I was needing some help updating it. Han had since left, and I didn't have anybody to help me update it. And Dave Klinge came along, and you know Dave, he's an amazing guy. He's on the board now, but he single-handedly revamped the whole thing, made it work so much better, it's much smoother with, technology is constantly changing and improving. So that's how that all got started. It took us about 4 years to really get the Secular Therapy Project up and running. I mean, it's a chicken and an egg thing, If you don't have any therapists, why would anybody come search for a therapist? And if you don't have any clients, why would a therapist join your organization? So, therapists are going to join the Secular Therapy Project so they can get paying clients. Right. Clients are going to join because they want to find a good therapist in their community. But if I don't have any in your community, it's kind of, anyway, it just took a long time, constantly, pounding the pavement, trying to find therapists to sign up and going to talk conferences, and letting people know about it. Well, now we're at 538 therapists scattered around mostly in North America, but we're in 7 countries now. And we have over 27 or 28,000 clients registered on the Secular Therapy Project.
It's incredible.
Yeah. So we were at a conference. Some of us that were at that time, it was probably 2013, I think, or 14. And we were conducting kind of here's RfR. It was a little side conference within the bigger conference. Here's what RfR is all about. And one of the people who was at the conference heard what we were trying to do with small groups. And he said, I think you could start a hotline. Of course, he called it a hotline. And he said, I have worked with suicide hotlines before, and I've seen their software and know how to put that together and all. Anyway, that's where the idea came from. It came from just going to a conference and talking to somebody. It turned out he couldn't or wouldn't, I don't remember, do the software development and the web page and all. But we did find somebody that could do that. And within a few months, we were beta testing what we later became known as the helpline, and that had the chat line and the phone line in it. And over the period of about a year or two, we perfected the chat line, and we also perfected the phone line, so that by 2016, the major programs, the small groups programs that you now run, of course, and the helpline, chat line, phone line, those three programs were pretty much developed, not as well as they are now, but they were there and they were working. And then we brought Gail on about 2016 as executive director, and she promptly started kicking butt and taking names, or in a good way.
She did.
She has really taken the bull by the horns, and providing really the day-to-day leadership. I think I'm a decent leader. I know how to bring people together. I know how to communicate a mission, but I'm not very good at the details day to day. And we need somebody like Gail who can kind of keep track of how the organization's functioning, what the leadership needs. And then I can step back and just kind of be the big picture. What's the future of RfR? And that's the role I've taken since Gail came on. It's so delightful, absolutely delightful to work with her, because it's like, I don't know, it's hard to describe it. I don't think I've ever worked with another human being that is as compassionate and intelligent. I mean, the intelligence just oozes from her.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a woman that decided at the age of something like 50 to go back and get a law degree, and she did in like the same time you would get if you were 20 years old, and then she passed the bar in California the first time she took it, which I've been told is the second hardest bar to pass. It is actually unheard of. So that's just how intelligent she is. And it's just a delight to work with her, because between her and I, and now we put together since about 2014 or 15, we really put together a damn good board of board members that, I mean, we've had some people leave, maybe like Susie Box. She was there from the very beginning, practically.
She
did a great,
fantastic.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
She was a great board member, but she's since moved on after like 5 years of doing it. We don't expect a lifetime sentence if you join RfR.
Oh, you don't? Oh, okay. That's good to know.
Yeah, we don't. Oh, wait, yeah. For you, you have a chain on your ankle. You're not getting away. But anyway, we have people who've been with us a long time and have done great stuff, like David Klinge. He was working. He did a second therapy project for 3 years before we said, well, why don't we bring him on as kind of the technical advisor to the board as a board member? And, we've just been able to collect some really, really dedicated people. I mean, these are people who really are, they just have a passion for what we're doing. I mean, like, you're going to talk to Shannon Nebo, I know, and you probably talked to Phil. I don't know if you've talked to Phil Sessions, but every one of these, Gwen is just astounding at how her skill level, but also her dedication and passion for what we do. So it's just it's been a delight to put an organization together. I know how to put organizations together. I know how to structure them. I know how to create the shell, if you will. But other people have to make that shell work. And that's what we've got. Just a great group of people. And it's not just the board members. I mean, I don't want the listener to think it's board members only, because we got great leaders on the chat line, phone line, John and Steve, and we got your leadership in the support groups, and Sasha and Sherry, of course, one of our newest board members, leading the international expansion. So,
well, kind of reflecting back on all that you've said, I can really see how each one of these pieces fit into the overall creation of RfR. You yourself were religious and kind of experienced, not necessarily deep, but some trauma coming out of it. And you understood some of the emotions that you kind of felt, even as you delved into it heavily as getting a master's in religion. You you understand psychology for both individuals as well as organizations as a whole. Mm-hmm. And then once you wrote the book about psychology on religion and started to promote it, you quickly saw this need that had not been fulfilled. And I can see all of those pieces as incredibly integral and just naturally forming the organization that we see now. And I got to tell you, you were talking about the people and the individuals inside the organization. And one of the things that is lacking among many of these volunteers is the ego. It seems that the vast majority of the volunteers are more mission driven than ego driven. And it's one of the most unique places that I've been able to do work with.
That's intentional. It really is intentional. This is not a place for self-glorification or your gratification comes from the fact that people say, thank you for helping me at the end of a phone call, at the end of a chat, at the end of a support group meeting. Your gratification comes because for example, we've got a whole team that works putting a library together of resources. Mm-hmm. And your gratification comes from knowing and hearing that people are using those resources to heal from the damage that they had experienced. If you're not, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Many of your listeners will probably be somewhat familiar with that. We want people in recovery from religion that are pretty high on the pyramid of needs. They're not here for themselves. They're here. They've got good skills in listening, or they can learn those skills. They're empathic. They can understand how other people might feel, can identify enough to help them. And it starts with the board. I mean, every one of our board members, and there's not an ego on that board. If anybody has too much of an ego, it's probably me. Nobody else. I mean, these people are just dedicated, and they don't care who gets the credit. And that's really important, because it's not a matter of did somebody get credit or not. Everybody should be getting credit. And I think the board's pretty darn good at this. I think our leaders have gotten very good at it. And that is praising people and letting people know, thank you for the efforts you've given. Thank you for helping the person you just helped. And it gets pretty specific, especially, on the helpline. I'll look at a specific chat, or one of our leaders will look at a specific chat, and we'll give very specific positive feedback about how you're using the skills that we've taught, or that we ask people to use on the chat line or in the support groups. And that goes a hell of a long way. Here's the secret, I think, Eric, and I'll give myself away here. People volunteer here because they want to pay it forward. They know how religion hurt them. They're trying to prevent that hurt in other people. Oftentimes, not everybody's like that. Some people, like Amaya, were, been atheists their whole life, but they still want to help people. Yeah. And they get meaning from you get meaning from meaningful activity. Mm-hmm. And it's meaningful when somebody says, thank you. I couldn't have done this without your help. Or thank you, that resource really meant a lot to me. Or thank you, that the way you restated my problem really gave a new perspective on it. That's so much more satisfying for somebody who's not ego driven. But if they're here to get individual recognition, you'll get it. We recognize people all the time, but that's not the main focus. The main focus is helping our clients.
Yeah. So I know that RfR as an organization had its ups and downs. It's had its struggles and growth and kind of honing in on some of the programs. But amidst all of those struggles and all the successes, what has this been like for you? Like I ask all of the other leaders, like, what has volunteering been like for you? And what, when you look back, what has it been like for you?
I've had a whole career. I'm 71 years old as of this interview, and I can say with no hesitation, this is the most meaningful thing I've ever done in my life. And I've done some pretty cool stuff. I've had a wonderful life. I've traveled all over the world. I've met some really interesting people, and I've just had a great life. And to end my life on this note is like, wow, how could I have done any better? It is such a super good group of people to work with, and it's such an important mission. And we are in a niche that no other organization on this entire planet is meeting.
Yeah.
It's not like there's a lot of people out there competing to help people recover from religion. I mean, there's a hell of a lot of people trying to get people into religion, but we are literally the only organization on the planet helping people get out of religion. And we're not doing it in a coercive way. We're doing it in a psychologically sound way. You go at your pace. You take your journey. If you want to stay in religion, we'll even help you do that. Mm-hmm. We'll help you do it more psychologically safe for you, so you can find a non-cult kind of religion, maybe, or a more liberal religion, or we aren't here to deconvert people. We're here to help people live safe, psychologically safe lives, so they can thrive while they're on this planet. And that's what's been so rewarding to me. I couldn't possibly help the thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people that we help. And probably every year we help tens of thousands of people in some way, shape, or form. I couldn't do that alone. It takes the 300 plus volunteers that we've got to make that happen. So we've got people meeting in, I hear Estonia soon, or Latin, which was it, Estonia? We got people meeting in Australia. We got people meeting in Mexico. And these people are able to do that because there's a trained volunteer that makes them feel safe. Because you cannot go into a church and feel safe. No matter how kind the church is, it's still going to ask you for a commitment, and they're still going to make you guilty about your sexuality or your body or something. And we're just different because you can be who you are, and you can discover who you are through just being around other people who are also discovering who they are at recovering from religion. It's really quite a calling. I'm almost evangelical about it, aren't I?
I don't know. Maybe that's from your teacher and your Sunday school history background.
I love teaching. I'm a terrible teacher. I tried teaching 2 different times, once undergraduate school, college, and graduate school, and I hated it. I just hated it. So I'm a good teacher, but I don't want to teach as a profession,
Well, Dr. Ray, this has been great. Folks, thanks for watching this. We're going to start the next few sections of this. We'll start talking about the programs that Recovering from Religion has to offer, and you'll get a much better idea of what RfR does. So thanks, Dr. Ray, again, for coming on and talking with us.
You're welcome.